The next talk is going to be about finding your fursona, and it is from Reuben Mount, who is also known as Vanguard Husky. He is, well, I'll let him introduce himself, but he's an academic who helped to run the Furry Studies Conference yesterday. So it'll not only be from the point of view of a furry, but also an academic who studied the subject. It's especially good for anybody who's fairly new to the fandom and discovering their own furriness. So if you know anybody like that who might be out in the hallway, let them know. It'll start in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to sit for this because I was up there all of yesterday, and this is far more casual anyway, and I didn't want to lecture you all anyway. So, hi, my name's Vanguard. I'm a furry academic, and I study the furry fandom from the UK. And I've been asked to put together this little kind of talk Q&A thing about what the fursona is and how you can find yours, which, judging by the crowd, some of you are cheating, you've already found yours. So what is a fursona is like a really good place to start, because it's a really hard thing to define, but it really does mean a really definite thing to everyone who has one. The characters I put up, by the way, they're not fursonas. They can be, but they're not. They're just there for, colour. But what I really wanted to get into, essentially, is the most simplest definition of what a fursona is, and then kind of build out from there. So, definition that I've come to is that a fursona is an anthropomorphic animal character, whether feral or anthro, that represents an individual in the furry fandom. So, to explain some of the words in that, anthropomorphic essentially means an animal that, or essentially anything really, that's given human traits. Feral or anthro is the difference in how that's portrayed in a fursona, so whether it's a truer to the animal or truer to the human, essentially. That's the difference between the feral and the anthro. And representing an individual, that's pretty simple. It's meant to represent you. Which leads to the thing, essentially, the fursona is you, but fluffy. And even that isn't necessarily accurate, because you can be scaly, you can be anything, really. But when it comes down to it, it's you, but fluffy. So the biggest kind of question, and it really for anyone outside the fandom, is how you even find your fursona, because there's so many different routes, so many different avenues, and so many different species you can choose from even, that it's just a really hard decision to make. It can be an animal you had when you were a child. There's multiple instances of that, where an animal that they had when they were a child, which is no longer with them, ended up becoming their fursona. And that's one route in. It can just be an animal or species you love. If you're a dog person, it can be a dog. That's completely fine. It can be an animal that you inherently see yourself in, albeit that's humanizing animals a little bit, but if there's a particular trait you see in an animal that really speaks to you, that can be your route in, that can be your decision as to what species you end up going with. It can be based on a TV show, a film, a video game, a book. Like the characters from the second slide, it can be a Pokésona based on the Pokemon series. You can draw from any avenue or sphere that you want to draw from to find it. And sometimes even your fursona finds you first before you discover it. Anecdotally, one of my friends was a dog, just a standard kind of domestic dog, for years, until I pointed out, I think you're more of a hyena, and they're a hyena now. Sometimes the fursona finds you before you find it. And that's also completely and utterly fine. So, me, as a key example, I'll kind of give how I found Vanguard as my fursona. So, name, Vanguard, obviously, which even that was a conscious choice based on my own personality traits. And your name, when you're a choose your fursona can be anything. It can be just a word you happen to like. It can be anything, just something that speaks to you. And this was something that spoke to me. So yeah, you can go with that. Canine, Siberian Husky. That was the easiest choice. Huskies are stubborn, loyal, and loud, and I am stubborn, loyal, and loud. It was a very easy decision. And then Siberian specifically because I hate the warm, and therefore Siberian Husky. Perfect. It just all came together. And also the fact I was a dog person, it was always going to be from the canine genus anyway. It's just that I landed very, very quickly on Husky, and it's never really changed. The only thing that's changed is kind of appearance things, which I'll get to now. So distinguishing markings, but you can't see it in this image, you could see it on the cover slide, a red kind of line running down from the left eye, red tips of the ears, red rings around the forearms. I basically like the color red. So it's essentially a standard Husky color palette of gray and white with just touches of red everywhere because I love the color red. And for those in the audience specifically who are fans of video games, the mark from the eye is a reference to the original Silent Hill on PS1. So I've even got and brought elements of my gaming enjoyment into the creation of my fursona. And also has 2 piercings in the right ear because I like piercings. And I will get those piercings eventually, it's just finding the time. Other details, once again, absolutely everything is considered. Wears a green varsity jacket with cream sleeves, wears a heart-shaped dog chain, which I am actually wearing, and is, in terms of lore, the bully of the bullies. That's what I designed and how I see Vanguard as. Someone who will not take bullying against anyone and will therefore bully the bullies to stop that. Hence the varsity jacket thing, kind of tying into that kind of high school American jock culture. But yeah, everything was considered. So, and the thing is that I want to impress is this wasn't an overnight. This was a gradual development of me kind of testing out new things, and then that being fine, me kind of accepting this is my fursona now, and then moving on a little bit, new artist, new commission, changing the design just a little bit each time until I finally reached this, which is my fursona and has been for years, but it did take me some time to get here. So over to you, and as I said, a lot of you in here are cheating. What species would, consider these questions, and do feel free to speak out if you want to. What species would you choose? What name would you be? Do you have any distinguishing features in mind? Are they references to things that you're interested in? Are they marks towards people you know, etc.? Floor's open to you. And fursuiters, that's really cheating. But what species would you choose? Like anyone?
Well, I would like to say that I would be a cat dragon because I would be sassy, and I think I am sassy. So I would, knock over somebody's glass of water, set something on fire just to cause a little trouble, and off I'd go. So that's how I envision myself.
Brilliant. Absolutely incredible. Anyone else? I may need to pass the mic if there's anyone much further back.
Orca.
Orca?
Yes. And I think it would be because, I don't know, orca seems to be kind of popular with climate protesters, and climate activism is something I think is really important. And orcas look really cool.
And they do look really cool. And the interesting thing is that marine kind of fursonas are not really heard of. I know a couple of sharks, but that's about the extent of it. So, yeah, it's a really unique choice as well. I'm not going to pester anyone if no one wants to contribute, but that's completely fine. But, definitely think about this, because even if you're not a furry, even if you don't want to have a fursona, these are questions definitely to think about if you were to do this, because the thing about the fursona that a lot of people don't speak about but is actually really important is how much of a path of discovery it is for each individual that is finding it. You find out real things about yourself, about how you interact with others, how you behave, how you see yourself even, is reflected in the species you choose, the colors, the markings, everything. Every one of those decisions is telling something about you, regardless of how much you may be aware of it. So definitely think about these questions as you go forwards, because it's a interesting and it's a great kind of path of discovery. I will say that's all I had in terms of actually telling you about the fursona. But any questions, anything? And I will hand out mics now so that you can actually be properly heard. Anyone? Joe?
Well, I guess I have a I don't know, question, observation, or something. What if you ask people, you know, friends, what they think your fursona should be? Because sometimes people see you better than you see yourself. My story, I think I told you, I'm not even a gray muzzle. I love the gray muzzles. Facebook is supposed to be anyone over 30. That's how young the furry scene is. They just started a thing for furries over 50 they call silver muzzles. And I want to start a group called Platinum Muzzles, because I definitely go back. But the story I'm going at is that I wanted to get a fursona. I've been in the fandom for years, and everybody had the fursonas, and I didn't have one. So I went to another gray muzzle, another guy from the early days. And I said, Jim, can you give me a bear or a lion badge? And he said, no, Joe, that's not you. And he drew me as, if everyone can see this little thing from so far away, he drew me as an alligator. And I said, oh, yeah, you nailed me, that kind of expression on his face. And back in the early cons, I was always walking around with a camcorder. So from that point on, my basic fursona is an alligator. So like I say, sometimes your friends know you better than you know yourself. There you go.
And on that note as well, you don't need to stick with a fursona at all if you don't want to. If something's not fitting you anymore, you can just go, okay, I'm the dawn of the dog is over. I will now be a tiger. That's completely okay. You can just cast things off if you need to.
Yep. And I'm also evolving, talking about changing fursona. I'm evolving into a rabbit character. His name is Jeepers. So in fact, I was just working right now on a sketch for what he would look like or what colors would be. So I've been meaning to do that for like 4 or 5 years, and finally want to get in gear on that. So maybe next year, if we do this again, maybe you'll see Jeepers here in person. We'll see. Who knows?
Could you pass the mic backwards there, Joe?
In terms of primacy, what do you think is primary? Is the person under the mask truly themselves, or is the mask truly the person?
Oh, okay, philosophy. A bit. Oh, posthumanism. Let's. I avoid posthumanism like the plague normally. I think it's a mixture of both, especially when it comes to the furry fandom, because you do have people whose personas is just a character they play, which is a completely fine way to do it, by the way. You can just have this completely disconnected from you character that you play, and that's your fursona. That's also completely fine. But the important thing is with the furry fandom is that both exist simultaneously. You have both these people that are playing characters and these people that are being their true, authentic selves, just as a dog, a cat, a wolf, whatever. But one thing I will say to that is, regardless of whether someone is playing a character or it's a reflection of themselves, every decision they make with that character, with the fursona, does mean something. And that can be something as simple as the artist you choose to do the art for your badge. Because you will be attracted to a particular person's, personality, art style, etc. It will say something about you regardless of how much you want to distance yourself from that character.
Yeah, it's just had a little discussion. It's probably illegitimate to say that it's completely removed from oneself, so it's not like a free pass in any sense.
Well, that distance is just impossible because, you know. Sorry, could I grab that and I'll pass that down? Thank you. Joelle?
Hello. Adding on Carrie's, what you feel would be your fursona is a cat dragon, could you talk a little more about original species or combinations of species?
Sure. I mean, that's one thing that's incredibly unique to the furry fandom, this whole idea of original species, because we now have 4, 5? There's quite a few. And then that falls into an even deeper discussion, which I'll get to in a second. But the whole idea of kind of species that we have created specifically to represent us means that then those species then come with their own reasons why you would approach them. So because we've created them, we have full control over essentially the law of what those species are like, and therefore you can pick them based on that. So the whole angel dragons love cheese thing, that's something that, because we've created angel dragons, we're responsible for that law, and therefore you can be attracted to those original species just based on the things that we've created are quote-unquote fact as to how those species would behave. Same with protogens and primogens, which falls into another big discussion around closed and open species as well, where sometimes your fursona can be a species that you have to purchase and adoptable, which is also fine. Because then you imbue your own personality within it in some way, in future art, etc. But yeah, I don't believe I completely forgot about the whole idea of original species when I was writing the slides. But it's just as valid as anything else, and also because the original species are so prolific now, protogen numbers are just rising and rising and rising. You can just see that. And that will be the thing that brings you in. That will be the thing that ends up being your fursona. And I personally love that every few years we get a new original species. It's a fantastic, and also it re-diversifies the appearance of the fandom every few years, which is fantastic. Any other questions? I can pass the mic around.
I'm curious, does the way in which someone develops a fursona have an effect on whether they might significantly alter or discard it later? Because you mentioned a number of vastly different ways people might develop their fursona, and I wonder if those might have different levels of, you might call it retention or longevity?
That's interesting. I don't actually know if there are any facts or figures to support that at all. I'd have to look into that, and also I'd be really interested to do that myself if no one else has done it. But I would say the more, my theory on it would be, the more embedded the reason that you've chosen that, the more longer lasting it will be. So the example that comes to mind is Sharon Roberts of Science, who, when she discovered her fursona, she based her fursona on her childhood dog, and that has remained consistent. There's, as far as I'm aware from seeing Sharon Roberts' art, there's not even been many changes in terms of colorings, markings, etc. over the years. It's remained consistent. So I think that the more kind of, I guess, the more raw you're willing to be with yourself about the decisions you're making, the longer they will last, would be my guess. But that's getting very heavily into psychology, and that is definitely not my field. But that would be my theory on it.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, could you pass it 2 back for me?
Yeah, hello. You said you researched the furry fandom. What have you done in terms of research? I'm just curious.
Oh, okay. So my current PhD thesis is looking at the furry fandom as a safe space to explore identity. So that's my core thesis. So that's touching upon themes of identity, specifically furry identity, the the whole academic discourse around safe spaces and whether they actually exist and how they work, etc. And then one of the really big things that's come out of my thesis so far is the fursona and how integral that is to both aspects, both the safe spaces and the identity. But aside from that, I bring in my other interests because I can't help myself. So I've done a lot of things that are both furry studies and game studies simultaneously. So looking at furry video games and how they're created and how they're different, how they work differently, or how they can be used to explore kind of non-human humanity and stuff like that. And what else? Oh, I did a thing on VR chat as well, and how VR chat is used by the furry fandom as a test bed for fursonas. I did a small piece on that as well. But I'm constantly working on stuff because I can't help myself.
Really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, along to the back. Thank you.
I got something from the another thing, from the fursona ID and stuff. I got a fursona too, not this one, but the other one. He's called Midnight, and it took me months to make him and create him, and I how to say that? I'm hoe zeg je bedacht, zeg maar. Thought of a wolf, because a wolf has power, is a family pet, and loves cuddles, and my fursona does that too. And I just, yeah, my fursona is just done.
Which is the exact example that I was using earlier about how you've chosen this based on traits that you see in the animal. You feel close to that, and you are that, and that's absolutely incredible. And also, wolves. Well, I'm not a wolf, but canines we get everywhere. It's good to see another wolf. But as a question back to you, then, are those other traits things that you see in yourself as well, the sort of like family kind of pack, having people around you, that sort of thing?
What? I don't know. A wolf is a leader of a pack mostly, and I'm mostly a person that take the lead in everything. And some of my friends said that too. So that's one of the things.
Excellent. And also, after my own heart as well. That's why I'm called Vanguard. I'm the first one there all the time. Are there any other questions? We've probably got time for a couple more. If there... Oh, there's space just forward here. Thank you.
Well, it's not really a question,
Sure.
but I just wanted to say that I myself have multiple fursonas as well. And I choose the animals also based on my personal characteristics as well. But something I also do is I also put some of my own characteristics into the animal. Like, how do I say this? Not all of my fursonas are supposed to be me, but a lot of my fursonas have aspects of me that I put into them.
Yeah, and anyone who has a fursona for any length of time will find themselves doing that anyway.
Yeah.
And also, massive respect for having multiple fursonas. I do not have the space in my head to have more than one. So
Yeah.
So, and in terms of picking those species, then, do you have any kind of selection process, or is it just?
Well, I'm a big animal lover. I basically love almost every animal, but usually it's mammals, mainly cats. But I'm not a cat nor a dog person. I like both equally. But yeah, with cats, for example, I'm not really an extroverted person. So I use cats because cats are more like, they do their own little thing. They don't really, you know, but at the same time, I also have wolf personas and sometimes even fantasy creatures that I come up with myself. And sometimes sometimes I just have an idea in my head of my own characteristics, and then I think of what animal would fit the best of those characteristics.
And all of those are completely completely fine routes to find in a persona.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's great that you're kind of putting it out there to find these things as well. It's a really interesting way of doing it.
Yeah.
And it's a case as well of the persona finding you.
Yeah, exactly
yeah.
that. Sometimes you choose a character or animal persona based on what the animal represents, but sometimes the animal finds you by what you represent, like your personality aspects.
Absolutely. Completely on the money. Any more questions? Probably got time for one more. Oh, all the way down in the front.
Well, that person also wants to say something.
Oh, okay. Then, yes, sorry.
Yeah, maybe you answered this one already, but the very first time you heard about the furry fandom, what was your thought about it pretty much? And what draw you completely into the fandom?
I mean, I think the truth is that I was furry all along. I just didn't realize there was a word for it and a community around it. I mean, I'm old. But a lot of the shows that I ended up watching and was absolutely obsessed with are all anthropomorphic, every single one. And that should have been a sign, but it wasn't. And it wasn't until quite a lot later on in university in which I discovered the furry fandom existed, and I've been in it ever since. But it's just something that I'd never thought about before, and it's a really typical tale, but a Google search ended up with me being here. And it's because of the incredible welcome I had immediately after discovering that the furry fandom existed and finding people and meeting people, and that's what's resulted in me going into studying it, because I see the worth in it and I see the value in the community having more people being able to see what it's actually like and not seeing a sensationalized take on it. So. Short answer is I found it through Google. Long answer, I've always been here. I just didn't know I was.
Well said. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's it. That's all we have time for. Thank you.